Hello, welcome back again. We're nearing the end of this series where we're looking at improvised weapons. We've looked at most of the main categories. What I want to do now is just have a look at what we call incidentals. Now these tend to be things that are too small to do any damage. So for example, do you want to pop the helmet down out of the way just for a moment? So something like my bar towel. Yeah, there is no way that I am going to do significant damage to a mountain like Ian. However, there are still ways that I can use this that are going to be of an advantage to me, and most of those are going to be distractional in purposes. So if I have something like this is still enough of a chance for me to close in and look to get some kind of advantage, close in, or potentially even run away depending on the circumstances. Also, a lot of things, if they're relatively small, I can, again, you just went, no, I don't like that. And that gives me that opportunity to get in. Same way as it used to be a handful of pocket change would do that job quite quickly, but how many people carry pocket change these days? But the traditional pocket sand of Defense dans la Rue comes in as well. Anything you've kind of got small that you're not really going to use for anything else, you can use as that kind of distractory purpose. What I'm going to do though is look at a couple of ones that we kind of look at as well that gives a few other options. One of them is the weighted handkerchief. This is literally a handkerchief with a 1p coin knotted into one corner. In and of itself, not particularly effective. Unless I can manage to whip him right across the nipple, this isn't really going to do much. Oh, can I get you to put the mask on for a second? Because what I'm actually aiming to do is, again, get this to go across the face. So suddenly, is enough to make you not like that. Yeah. I'm also going to say, this one's plastic. Because we switched out the metal ones because they were doing too much damage. Yeah. But that allows me to do things so when an attack punch was coming in, I can block. And that is not what you were expecting. And it's quite distracting, and it gives me that opportunity in that moment to use this. So I can still from this use that flicking, keep him busy, I can smack him across the face, and I've got that lovely little riposte from a parry, normally to lead into something else. If I'm lucky, potentially as a punch comes in, I might also, if I block this way, it's not quite worked there, I can start looking to potentially try and grab and control the wrist. Lets me start moving into elbow locks and such like. And if I really want to be smart, if you want to take the helmet off again, because I'll need access to the neck for this one, is that potentially if I can use that distraction across here, if I then backhand him in the back of the head, so I'm trying to do it with enough force but not enough force, this will float round onto the shoulder. If I can grab that and twist, I can then actually start to do a triangle choke across my opponent. Now, how effective that's going to be, because they're going to use those few seconds of consciousness to make sure you're really hurt, but it's potentially an option. I can start using the weighted handkerchief. So it's one that's worth knowing a little bit about. The other one is, I'm going to take Ian's phone now, and this is of course the easiest way to mug somebody is to ask them for their phone. But something like a phone we don't think of as being particularly effective as a weapon, but anything that doesn't mean I actually have to put my actual body into things means that I can hit places I wouldn't normally be allowed to hit. So for example, it would be a really dumb idea for me to smash the front of your jaw there. Yeah, because all that's going to happen is I'm going to smash up my fingers. However, if I smash this into the front of your jaw, you're now suffering, and I might have bust my phone, but I have those kind of options. So we can look at things like, again, just punch coming in, the standard one, to use it, slam up into the armpit, and I can start looking to control almost as if it was a small baton. And that's, as well as just hitting. I can also use it for some locks. If Ian grabs the top of my head, it's like a handful of hair. This is not a great situation, because either I have to rip out a whole chunk of my head, or deal with this. However, doing things like placing the phone flat on the top of the knuckles and pushing down makes his hand open up. And now I'm no longer held, and I've got phone to the back of the spine. I'll give you his phone back before I keep beating on with it. But so the incidentals are more just small things, and really you're either looking for something small you can use as a distraction, or something that you can hit with instead of it being your own hand, because that's likely to mean you're going to take less damage. The Incidentals are a bit of an odd one, a bit of an eclectic group, but we throw them in there just to make people think about them rather than necessarily have a structured plan for that one. So hopefully that makes sense. We're going to drop by one more of these to talk about knives because they kind of fall vaguely into this category before we move on and look at something else. So hopefully you found that useful, and we'll catch up with you next week.